I just can't let you go. Lord knows that I've tried to. You said I was the only
What's
one.
up, everybody? Welcome to my channel.
No one
I'm
likes being
Sunshinery. Make
lied
sure
to.
to subscribe and like this video.
You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. We are here for a Rachel Goes Rogue podcast video. And this week is a, I guess, touchy subject. Oh, she is talking about sex, baby. Rachel is also joined by a sex therapist. Her name is Nikquan Lewis, and they are going to have a very personal conversation about sex and intimacy. I hope you are all ready for this. We need to buckle up for this one. For sure, man. Oh my God. I heard already some previews of this. It's spicy. So make sure to like this video before you start. Subscribe to my channel if you have not yet subscribed. You are missing out. Make sure your notifications are set to all. And let's go, guys. Let's drive this car.
Welcome back to another episode of Rachel Goes Rogue. This is your host, Rachel Savannah Leviss, and today we are talking about sex. I feel like sex is kind of a taboo topic, but it's something that affects us immensely and our decision making in choosing a life partner or a significant other. It's not the most comfortable conversation to have, but I feel like it's very important. And as I think back to my previous partners and my sexual experiences, each one has been very different in their own way. I wanted to ask a professional more about the specifics that go into sex and what the healthy boundaries are with sex. Because as I've experienced not so healthy relationships, my goal going forward is to cultivate a healthy relationship in all different aspects. And physical intimacy is definitely one of those. Today, joining on the podcast is Nikquan Lewis, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is a professional counselor and a relationship and sex therapist. She provides individual therapy, couples therapy, and sex therapy. She's a featured expert in publications such as Essence, Cosmopolitan, and Glamour. Her mission extends beyond therapy as she fosters deep connections and intentional growth for singles, couples, and groups. Hi, welcome, Nikquan.
Hi, how are you? It's so good to see you and meet you.
I'm good. It's so good to meet you and see you too. Thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I'm prefacing our listeners to know that we're talking about sex today. And I feel like it's kind of one of those topics that used to make me squirm a little bit, but I think it's something that's so important. And during my time at the Meadows, I learned a lot about mixing up intensity for intimacy and misunderstanding that this powerful sexual connection is love. And that's actually not the case. So I want to go into those topics and other things too. So thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Now, talking about sex with a sex therapist is very healthy. I don't think that's a bad thing to be talking about at all. My whole thing with this is, what are Rachel's intentions for sharing this with us? Is she trying to open up to us about her sex life and past relationships and what they meant to her? Or is she just trying to throw some people under the bus because she feels like if she talks about it, it's something that they might be too embarrassed to talk about and even rebuttal against what she has to say regarding it? Do you know what I mean? I feel like there are other intentions to why she is talking about this, not just to have healthy boundaries and learn more about her sex life with the sex therapist. Let me know what you guys think down below.
Okay, cool. What would you say are the most important ingredients for sex?
So, the most important ingredients for sex is starting with a healthy relationship, first of all. Healthy relationship is built off of 3 foundational needs, of course, others, but starting with respect, compassion, and trust. Good sex, I believe, good sex is a component of a healthy relationship. So, it starts there. It starts with communication. right? Good sex is co-created, meaning it's between you and your partner or partners, but it's about understanding what your sexual boundaries are, what brings you pleasure. It's about creating the sex life that you desire and deserve.
And how do you communicate that with somebody? Because it could be an awkward conversation if you're not used to talking about what feels good and what you actually want.
Absolutely. Great question. As a sex therapist, I talk to couples about this every single day because there's so much stigma and shame around sex, right? And that hinders how we talk about it or if we talk about it at all. And so, because a lot of us didn't grow up talking about those type of things, you just don't have the language. So the way that you talk about it is first by creating a safe space. I'm talking about an emotionally safe space. If I don't feel comfortable with you, if I feel like you're going to judge me and if I share something with you and you screw your face up or grab your pearls, baby, I'm not talking to you, right? So you have to create that emotionally safe space. And then you have to give each other permission to be completely honest and transparent. No judgment, no shame. So that's what I'm talking about when I say sexual boundaries. It's setting the grounds for this intimate and sensitive conversation. And so in order for you to tell your partner what you like, you have to know yourself, right? So I'm a big proponent of self-pleasure because you need to know what your body craves so that you can communicate that to somebody else, right? And so it's a we conversation. This is, what my body enjoys. And you can even show them that with like a hand over hand movement. But it starts with sexual boundaries, talking about what brings you pleasure, creating that safe space and that judgment-free zone, and talking about what it is that you enjoy and what you think you might enjoy.
Okay.
And this is where you have to then ask yourself, if you are not having those types of communication with someone you are interested in and you want to be passionate with, and you just go into it, that can cause unhealthy boundaries. Then you are exploring with each other without talking about it. And it can then lead to someone not liking what someone did, which is because they could not communicate with each other to start with about what they like and what they don't like. I have a feeling that this is where this conversation is going to lead. Don't you all? I mean, we know that her and Sandoval, yes, were friends. Were they talking about what they enjoyed with sex before that? No. Most of the time, friends don't really talk about things like that. Unless it's like girlfriend to girlfriend or maybe guy to guy, more girlfriend to girlfriend. I don't really think guys talk about that too much, though I do know some do. It's the point, though, that they were friends and they had an intimate moment together where it immediately turned into having sex in the pool or outside the pool. Wherever it happened, it was there. Or in the car. I forgot exactly where they had sex. I think they made out in the pool, then had sex in the car. Regardless, they didn't have communications before that point, which then might have not led to these healthy boundaries. So, for instance, this whole him recording her without her permission. I know that's going to be a big topic as well. And the thing with that is, clearly they were used to having these FaceTime chats where they were pleasuring themselves, but without that healthy communication of boundaries, he didn't know that she wouldn't want him recording it so that maybe he could later on watch it to pleasure himself later on while thinking about her, kind of a thing. Do you know what I mean? Let's just keep listening because I have a feeling this is going to go in a completely different direction, because the thing with Rachel is there was really no communication about healthy boundaries with sex when it came to Sandoval and James Kennedy.
Okay. Emotions are coming up for me because I feel like there's a lot of maybe shame surrounding pleasing yourself. And I have my own situation that I went through that I feel a little bit of shame surrounding it. But how would you suggest somebody gets to know their body better to know how to achieve that ultimate pleasure?
So it starts with just what you said, Rachel, it's the shame. Before you can really explore your body and enjoy it, you have to get out of your head. First of all, it's honoring that pleasure is our birthright. We all deserve pleasure. And I advocate for everyone to live a pleasure-filled life. So before you can enjoy your body, you have to honor that. So it's sexual affirmations that I have my clients give themselves, honoring their body, right? Connecting with that sensual side of them. And then you give yourself permission to explore every part of your body. There are several erogenous zones.
So before we go into exploring these erogenous zones with Rachel and the sex therapist, I wanted to say this is what I meant. This is where she wasn't so much feeling shame for learning about what she enjoyed by pleasuring herself. It was the shame that came from it, that someone recorded her while doing it and the whole world found out about it. That's the shame. And she was trying to play it into it, which the therapist didn't connect with it, because I don't know if the therapist really knows exactly what happened. But that's where the shame part came from. She's not, well, I can't say that she's not, but I think she felt more shame over the fact that she was recorded masturbating and the whole world found out about it because Sandoval recorded it. She felt shame from that. She felt shame from the affair, and she felt shameful that now people knew this about her. Which I don't think there's anything shameful with her learning to pleasure herself or doing video chats with people like that, minus the fact that he should have been single and he should have not been dating your best friend, things like that. That's where you could feel shame. You should feel shame regardless, because honestly, that's just disgusting that you would do to your friend, but we won't go there, will we? The point I'm trying to make is she was trying to sneak in the fact that she felt shameful for her exploring her body because of an event that happened, which the therapist didn't click into. And now we're going into a different direction of where these special points on your body are that you can feel these sexual feelings.
Did you know that on the body?
I
Several.
know an erogenous zone is your wrist and maybe behind your ear or your earlobe. What are
Yes.
some of the other ones?
Oh my goodness, behind your knee, if you can believe it. Behind your knee is one, your scalp. So what I want people to do, and I encourage you to do this, is do what's called pleasure mapping. And it's basically taking your hand, and especially if you have nails, and just kind of grazing them over your body very lightly, your face, your ears. When I did this the first time, I recognized for myself that my inner ears are very sensitive. Our bodies are different, right? And so what's erogenous for me may not be erogenous for you. But the zones are pretty much the same. It's just about what gives us each pleasure. The lower back is a very sensitive space. Your feet, right? So there's several places. So give yourself permission to enjoy pleasure and pay attention to the pressure that you use, scents and things. Incorporate toys if you're okay with that. And if you're not, explore your belief system around that. So that's what it starts with. Understanding your belief system, giving yourself permission to release shame because it doesn't belong to you, and then giving yourself permission to explore your body, whether it's with your hands, with toys.
Do you have advice for somebody who doesn't orgasm while having sex?
Yes. So that's a loaded question, Fran. So coming to me with the I experience that a lot. So coming to me, number one, we're going to make sure that you get a doctor's appointment schedule, because you always want to start with the physical to rule out any type of physical issues, right? Then we're going to talk about what your belief system is around sex, because if this has anything to do with performance anxiety, which just means being in your head, right? If you're in your head and not focusing on the pleasure, it's going to be an absolute blockage. That could absolutely impact your ability to experience pleasure. And so then, can you experience orgasms manually, like through masturbation? Can you do it through partner sex? Like, there's several questions that you want to assess. Are you also advocating for yourself if you're having partner sex? Are you telling your partner what you enjoy, right? So that you can tell them what to do, right? So there's a lot of things that you want to consider. Have you explored your body? Have you, explored or had orgasms with some partners versus others? But if you can't do it with yourself, it starts with, what is going on? What are you doing? Are you only trying to obtain it through penetration, which 80% of women don't experience orgasm through penetration. So that is not uncommon, right? So there's several things to consider. What are you doing and what are you thinking about while you're doing it? Are you focusing on the pleasure that you're experiencing? And it's important to understand that orgasming is one way to experience pleasure. There are so many others that have nothing to do with penetration, like the erogenous zones and, focusing on the connection. Orgasm is great, but it's one way to experience pleasure.
Why do I feel like this was another concealed kind of question? I feel like she only said it because when she was with James, she has already said that she wasn't experiencing orgasms with him. But then when she got with Sandoval, it was something that she had never experienced, and all of a sudden now she's experiencing it, and that's how she got hooked into this passion that she had for him, and why she thought it was love, but really it was lust. This is going to end up bad, and I don't even know, so let's just hear what she has to say. Let's just hear it. I just can hear what she's saying. I know the points she's trying to make, and I just see that the therapist isn't picking up what she's putting down, because the therapist, I don't think, has a clue, really. She might have a little bit of a clue, but I don't think she really understands the dynamic of what happened and why Rachel is saying some of the things she's saying. You get what I mean?
Yeah, in my past relationships, I was experiencing sex and I wasn't experiencing orgasms. And so when I ventured into a new relationship, I started experiencing orgasms for the first time. And I noticed it would become it was very powerful. How do you make sure that you're not falling into a relationship for the pleasure of that relationship and your judgment gets clouded?
Yes, so that's a great question.
Hot diggity dog, I was right. I knew it was a concealed kind of question. In a new relationship, after she got out of a relationship and into a new relationship, I don't know. I don't know if you could really count the affair with Sandoval as a new relationship. I don't know. Let's keep listening.
And so I would dig a lot deeper into the belief system surrounding this relationship. So although I'm hearing that in this relationship you started having orgasms, it was, surprising to you. Maybe you never experienced that before, and it kind of took things to another level. However, there likely was that's a part of the story, but I would imagine that's not the entire part of the story as far as things that you were experiencing outside of the orgasm with this specific person. Also, were you loving yourself intentionally? Because when we lose ourselves in relationships, oftentimes there's a disconnect with us, emotionally being intentional about self-love. So when I say I would, dig deeper, I am definitely going to assess your relationship with yourself, right? Your standards of relationship, your social support network, which just means like your support system. How are you nurturing your individuality? Because the orgasm can take you over the moon, absolutely. But I'm interested also in these various areas of your life in addition to that, to make sure that you're nurturing them. It's about having a healthy relationship with yourself so that you can have a healthy relationship with others. And healthy relationships with others has boundaries, right? And it has ways to ensure that if we're caring for ourselves, we don't necessarily get lost in a sauce.
Yeah, I think I definitely got lost in the sauce and I lost my identity in a way. I was just a very lost person altogether, and I was finding solace in this person and used him almost as an escape from reality, which I think can be a very dangerous place because there's like a lot of isolation and yeah, downright escape from the reality of what was happening in our world. Maybe there was like this element of fantasy that was enmeshed with the connection that we had as well.
You don't say, Rachel. I totally believe she got lost in the sauce. There were no healthy communication and boundaries with her relationship with Sandoval. That's where it all began. That's where it all started to go wrong. These were the red flags that you were missing. You were too into the feelings that you were feeling that he made you feel that you had never felt before. That yes, you put yourself in a fantasy. And when he promised you certain things and told you he was going to do and this and that and be with you, you got lost in it. But it was your job as a human being and as your own person to realize what he was saying and doing was one thing, but the actions he was taking was another. And that should have told you everything that you needed to know. And I understand feeling like, oh my God, but I never felt like this before. I might never feel like this again. You don't know until you try. You don't know until you branch out. You don't know until you actually go and see for yourself. And if you keep yourself in that mess, you are going to be in that mess. And that's what happens. You stayed in that mess for 7 months until shit hit the fan.
And I want you to know that you are not the only one that has experienced that. Is it healthy? No, but I mean, a lot of us have been there, and that's why it's just so important that we again have healthy relationships with ourselves. We have healthy coping skills because sex can absolutely be a coping skill. The issue is such as, other things like drugs, alcohol, there are consequences with it, right? Now, if you're using it, as a stress reliever, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you mentioned before about, sex addiction, it's actually called out of control sexual behavior, right? That's the technical term because sex addiction is not diagnosable. Out of control sexual behavior. And so when we engage in that and we lose ourselves, we forfeit, our friends and, our responsibilities in our life. Now we're talking about, having maybe an unhealthy relationship with it. And so again, as a therapist, I'm looking at the full picture. What are these key areas? Social support, individuality, family, work, all these things. How are these things operating? What's your motivation for this relationship? What are you getting from it? Because even though you may have lost yourself, you were getting something out of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am? When did she bring up sex addiction? I didn't hear that. And to me, what this therapist is saying is that Rachel has been engaging or was engaging in out of control sexual behavior, which makes sense, seeing as she did forfeit her friends. She started lying to people. She started hiding things from people. She was lying about the situation, the whole relationship, what she was doing, saying, going, all of that. And it was to engage in these sexual acts with Sandoval, which makes it uncontrolled sexual behavior. I'm not saying that she has what they considered a sex addiction. I just think that she was so wrapped up in how amazing that it felt and her finally getting to know her own body and experiencing that orgasm for the first time, and then afterwards and afterwards and afterwards, that it became out of control. That's why when even in the reunion, they were saying how like Rachel got skirted away scot-free and she didn't get to face these demons like Sandoval did. I believe that she has faced some of her demons. I do believe, though, that both of them, took two to tango, as they said, and they both have to take accountability for their own actions in what they chose to do. And Rachel might have, yes, been manipulated by Sandoval in ways that he was saying things to her, making her think things like that. But she chose to keep engaging. She chose to keep having that uncontrollable sexual behavior with him.
And as you're talking about drugs and alcohol and how that plays into, our relationships, can you speak more about rituals?
When you say rituals, do you mean like healthy rituals? What kind of rituals do you mean?
Well, the relationship that I was in was not a healthy relationship, and I noticed that there were rituals taking place before we would even engage in having a sexual connection, which included like 3 shots of whiskey and a beer and, like talking about a specific topic before even engaging in something like that. And I think maybe that not to blame it on the alcohol per se, but I think that that definitely helped to lower the inhibitions and created more of an ease and a relaxed nature. Whereas if we didn't engage in those rituals, it wouldn't feel as natural.
And yes, I'm going to stop her here already because though she considers this rituals, she chose to partake in those rituals which were the 3 shots of whiskey, a beer, and then talking about this one thing. She chose to engage. She chose to interact. She chose to take those shots back. Nobody forced the liquor down her throat. Does, yes, alcohol play a part? It does. People usually drink to loosen up, and when you have 3 shots and a beer, you are going to be more laid back, relaxed, and maybe more in that sense of mind state that let's just have fun now. Because you've already explored it with him at that point. Now it was a continued thing that you already knew you enjoyed and that you were finding pleasure from, so you felt pleasure wanting to do it again, which led to it over and over again and not really communicating what the main issue really was, which was that he had a girlfriend, he was still with Ariana, he was telling you one thing but doing another, and nothing was actually happening. That's when you should have stopped everything and said, what the fuck is going on here? What are we doing? But this is where I say she needs to take accountability for her actions because she chose to let it keep going, not stop it, and kept going with it. Why? Until finally you got called out and found out from the victim, then that's when everything came to a stop. And that's when you finally thought, something's not right here.
Absolutely. Okay. So what happens is, again, when there's an unhealthy dynamic, you feel the need to do something to take the edge off. So those are actually red flags that you can look for. Do you require drugs, alcohol, being talked into before you engage? Or do you require something in order to simply relax and, be intimate with this person? So those are the things that I would call more so red flags to say, okay, why do I need this in order to do this? Right? Again, what's my belief system surrounding this relationship? Is there any shame that I am working through? Is it guilt that I'm working through? Blame, right? There are 3 emotions that we experience, shame, guilt, and blame. They're feelings like anything else. However, when we sit in them, it brings us down. And if we're talking about rituals, we may engage in certain things, drugs, alcohol, to work through them so that we can then engage sexually.
I mean, she explained it better, but that's exactly what was happening. I think that she was compensating with the alcohol for the feelings that she was trying not to feel about everything that she was going through. Also maybe feeling that guilt that she's sleeping with her friend's boyfriend, and it took that little bit of an edge off, but she still felt that pleasure from previous that she knew that she could get again, and that was what enticed her to continue to keep doing what she was doing. Along with his manipulation, his broken promises, all of that. But as the lady said, those are clear red flags. Why didn't she stop? Why didn't she see these red flags and say, what the fuck am I doing? That's the questions we've all been wanting to know for so long. Why did she let it go on as long as she did? We could say the same for him. Why did he allow it to go on for as long as he did? But it's still the same question. We still don't have the answers to them. And honestly, we've been getting a lot of victim blaming. Well, he did this to me, and he said this that made me feel like this, and she did this, and she said this, and she acted like this. No one's taking responsibility. No one's actually saying, what I did was wrong, and I can see the mistakes that I made, and I'm choosing not to ever do that again and learn from the mistakes that I made. And listen, I know that she's done work at the Meadows and she's continuing to engage in active therapy. I do feel like this podcast that she has is, yes, a way to express herself, but also her way of trying to understand it all still.
Definitely. Yeah, I can see how that's a red flag now looking back for sure. And it's part of the reason too that as I'm getting back into the dating world and experiencing that again, I'm choosing to it's a thing called sober dating. So I'm choosing not to drink alcohol, and definitely not doing drugs on dates. So I can really get to know the person and get to know how I feel in my own body without the influence of something else.
I'm a huge advocate for that, as well as Rachel, do you know your standards of relationship, the things that you are looking for in a healthy relationship?
I believe I do. I'm looking for healthy communication,
Yep.
where, we're not conflict avoidant. We're able to talk about things and bring things to the surface so we can foster more true intimacy. I'm looking for similar values,
Hmm.
honesty, integrity, respect, kindness, hardworking and family. I'm looking for someone that like takes care of their body, that views their body as a temple. I also think that someone who is emotionally intelligent, who's able to talk about their emotions, and not only that, but like emotionally regulated. So, fights aren't explosive. We're able to have a stable conversation and really express our feelings in a way that isn't volatile.
Yes. Look at you. Check you out. Yes, ma'am. Those are fabulous standards of relationship. Very, I mean, I know we just met, but I'm very proud of you for knowing this. I speak to women, a lot older and they just haven't done the work yet. So they may not know. But if you lead with these standards of relationship while you're getting back into the dating world, you will find that it's a lot more challenging to get into something that is completely unhealthy because you're asking these questions.
And I will give credit where credit is due. She knows what she is now looking for in a healthy relationship. My thing is, does she know that she can achieve all of those things for a partner in herself? Like, can she display healthy communication with emotions? Is she trustworthy? Does she have integrity? Is she family oriented? Is she not going to be able to avoid conflict and be able to discuss it healthily with her new partner? Is she going to be able to respect that other person? Does she know the values that she has for herself that she wants to find in somebody else as well? Does she know how to love herself? Because the biggest thing is you cannot love anybody else until you know how to love yourself. So these are all wonderful, amazing things that she is now displaying and actively seeking for a partner. But the question I have is, does she know that she can actively uphold all of those same standards that she's looking for in a man for that partner that she has herself?
Also considering what makes you feel safe, because those are likely a part of your key values that we sometimes don't connect, right? So I know for me, protection, as far as like feeling protected, follow through, feeling secure, like those things are like make me feel safe, and those are part of my key values as well. So
Yes. And I listened to just a podcast snippet of a therapist saying that there have been studies by women who have described the feeling of safety, and being safe sparks the emotions of being attracted to somebody.
yeah, absolutely. Because intimacy requires vulnerability, right? And if I don't feel safe with you, wall is coming up, right? And so that absolutely impacts intimacy. And when I'm talking about intimacy, I'm talking about the various types of intimacy, including sexual intimacy. But absolutely, safety is a key component for healthy intimacy, I should say.
And you know what? I really do agree with the therapist on that because I can personally feel that I feel completely 100,000% safe with my boyfriend. I know he's going to protect me. He's going to do anything to stop a situation if he sees occur. We've been in those positions where, I was at a concert and a guy was crowd surfing and he didn't realize it because he was drunk too, but he had ripped my gauge out of my ear. Well, when he came down to the floor, because they dropped him after that, I started screaming at the guy because, yeah, it fucking hurt. I had literally just sized my ear up the next size that night. So I was pissed. Well, my boyfriend was holding the guy back because he was a little drunk. Me being 5'1", snuck underneath my boyfriend's arm and went and decked the guy right in the face. That's how pissed I was. So after that, he had to hold the guy back. The guy next to me held him back. And, my boyfriend laughed because he knows that I can handle myself, but he was still there to protect me. Even when we had some strange guy that clearly was on something wandering the streets, he made sure to get in front of me and protect me. Now, I don't really feel that Rachel felt that same kind of safety that I feel with Sandoval or even James. And I do believe that is a big factor to maybe why there was intimacy issues with James and maybe was a red flag for her with Sandoval, though she just never saw it. But that's just a little story time about me and how I feel. I think that's actually a very valid point, and I never really comprehended it, though I did, because I have always felt that I'm safe with him, and I never felt like that with another guy, and it's maybe the reason I've come back to him now 3 times. Third time's a charm, though, ladies. I will say that. He's the only guy I've ever given a second, let alone third chance to, and it was just the wrong timing back then, and we are now at the right time in our life, and I'm very happy. And I do hope that Rachel can feel that same kind of safety and love and just worth for herself one day. I wish that for all of them. Katie, Lala, all of them.
Can you talk about like what happens to the chemistry in the brain specifically for women who have sex with somebody? Like, does it change something in your brain that like makes it harder to discern if this is a good life partner or not?
So here's the thing. One, when we have sex and we experience pleasure, dopamine is released in the brain, right? There's so many, this is also a layered question. You have people that can have sex with people and there's no connection and they're simply seeking pleasure and that's just what it is. You have others that require that emotional connection. And you also have, furthermore, others who sex and emotions are absolutely tied into, and then those people get lost in the sauce, right? So it's a first knowing what is your relationship with sex? What happens when you experience pleasure? Do you automatically get connected to this person or can you just hit it and quit it type of thing? You have to know that about yourself and be honest with yourself. So dopamine is being released, but it really does depend on your personal experience with sex, what happens in your body when you experience it, the mind and body connection, what happens with both. Everyone is different in that sense. So you have people that don't, it doesn't get confusing, but there's a lot of us women that do connect the two. And if we don't have that healthy foundation rooted in myself, right? Again, self-love, all the things, then I can absolutely get kind of drugged off of the dopamine. And now I am not making rational decisions. I'm more so living in maybe even dating like the possibilities versus looking at the reality type of thing. All those things can happen when you are more of an emotional person that gets lost in that and not necessarily rooted as an individual.
On like the flip side of that, is love enough? What happens if you're emotionally connected to a partner, but sexually it just isn't there? And is there a way to fix that?
So love is not enough for a lot of things. Love is important. So if we're talking about a healthy relationship, is love enough? No. You have to be in alignment. If you're not in alignment when you meet someone, we have to have a conversation of is there something that we can do? Can we compromise? Right? Can love be enough when you have poor sex or trash sex, we'll just say? It depends because you have couples that, are absolutely in love and they don't have sex for a number of reasons. Whether it's, medical, not interested. It depends on how high a priority sex is in your relationship. Sex is an important part of a healthy relationship, but it varies though, because it depends on the couple. I work with couples who, may not have it for whatever reason, but they absolutely can have a very pleasure-filled life because it may not be a priority, or maybe it's off the table for another reason, one reason or another. If it is high on a priority list and it's trash, yes, you come to a sex therapist. We talk about how to excite and explore and expand your sex life. There's so many different things that couples can do to expand, but you have to be willing and you have to, be okay with talking about it. So can it change? Yes. But is love enough? Sexually, it depends. It depends on your relationship with sex and what you want, what your priorities are in your relationship.
I understand where she was going with that question, but again, I don't think the therapist was getting what she was putting down, kind of a thing. Because she's said, like, oh, I love Sandoval, but it wasn't enough. And really, it wasn't real love. We've come to know that now. It was that she was so infatuated with their sexual experience that made her feel like it was real love. But I will say, I do agree with the therapist. Every person's situation is different, every couple is different. It's how you prioritize sex and how your partner prioritizes it. And if you both are in two different spectrums, you need to somehow meet in the middle and be able to compensate for each other. If you cannot do that, then you should be looking to make sure you're happy with who you're with. And if you're not satisfied and happy, then you need to do what's best for yourself to make yourself happy. Because the most important thing in this world is that you are happy.
Does this change as you age? Or, for instance, if you're in a relationship for a very long time and those honeymoon feelings seem to have subsided, does that change as you age?
Absolutely. It absolutely changes because what happens is for a lot of people, our libidos change. I'm talking about our sex drives, right? So when I work with couples, let's say I work with couples that are in their 30s or so, I advocate for them to talk about the issues now because as long as we age and as long as we stay alive, our sexual health is going to change. It's going to happen. So let's talk about it when it's not a problem. When the penis is not working, what are we going to do? When, women, our hormones are fluctuating, what are we going to do? Right? Let's talk about how to maintain sexual health, how to have those challenging questions. Now we can be preventative and not reparative because I work with a lot of older couples. They don't have any protocols in place and they're experiencing these things for the first time. And there's a lot of, again, shame around them. But if you've been preventative years before, now we have a plan. So if you do come to me and there's shame, we're going to work through those things. And we're going to talk about how libidos change, how sex drives change. Sometimes we are spontaneous, so when I say spontaneous desire, I'm talking about the desire that a lot of us experience in our 20s. The wind could blow and you would feel a little frisky, right? You don't need much. Then you have responsive desire. And this just means that you need a stimulus of some kind. Maybe you see something on TV and now you get a little frisky, or you get a physical touch, or your love language is spoken and you get frisky. The way that you get turned on can change with age, but younger people can experience those different types of desire as well. It's having the language to communicate to your partner how you get turned on, whether you are young or older. But those things absolutely will shift when you get older. You communicate though. That's where it starts and ends. Communicating what you're experiencing, how your pleasure and your relationship with pleasure is changing. The things that used to give you pleasure, when you were younger, very well may not work when you're older, right? So let's talk about what that looks like at every stage of life.
I think the whole point of all of that is communication is key. No matter what it is in life, it could be friends, it could be relationships, communication is key, especially in a relationship. If you do not know how to communicate to your partner or have those hard hitting conversations, you really do need to evaluate the relationship, because in a relationship, especially for a long period of time as well, if you are lacking communication, your relationship is lacking, and you will never get to a point where you understand each other if you can't communicate to each other. And I agree with her. Like, with age, the libido goes down, and it's a good thing to talk about it and know, like, this is what is to be expected as we get older. If this happens, what are we going to do? There are always other ways to figure out a solution to a problem. So though it might seem like it is a big problem not to be able to have sex with your partner, there are other things that can be done to fulfill each other's needs. Communication is definitely key. And at this stage of the game, Rachel isn't in a relationship that we know of right now. I know she might be talking to somebody, but these aren't conversations that they're going to be having right away. That's something that will come later on down the road. But the foundation of communication is key to her new relationship, or any new relationship she gets herself in.
What do you do if you are in love, but your sexual priorities vary between partners? Do you repair that, or do you break up, or where do you go from there?
So, if you are in love and you want to stay in the relationship, then you again can come to a sex therapist and we can talk about what a bridge looks like. We can talk about, again, how to talk about what you desire. Oftentimes, people just don't have the language, they don't understand sexual boundaries, and they don't see a way out of this box that they have found themselves in. We talk about how to expand. There's a form that I have my couples fill out. It's called the yes, no, or maybe form. It has a variety of things that you can experience sexually. However, if it's a yes, check it off. If it's a no, check it off. If it's a maybe, check it off. But discuss everything, because you may not want something in this way, but maybe you would be open to a variation. When what you just described comes with like a lack of communication and more rigid boundaries. I'm not ever suggesting that anyone go outside of their boundaries, but let's discuss it. So do you just break up? Not if you want the relationship. If the relationship is rooted in those key things, love, trust, compassion, respect, and you want to work on the relationship with assistance, you can improve your sex life. But if people are not willing and sex is high on the priority, then you may have to. You can discuss what are some compromises. If no one is willing to compromise, then you may end the relationship. But if you want the relationship, there are things that you can do for sure.
One of the things that I'm taking more seriously is my sexual health, and like getting an STD test and asking my partner to get an STD test before there's intimacy in the bedroom. So how do you like bring up a conversation like that if it feels a little bit uncomfortable?
There are so many people in your age range that are entering the dating pool. Sexual health is at the forefront of social media and society right now, right? So there are a lot of people that are not playing anymore, and they are advocating for their mental, relational, and sexual wellness. And so if you feel uncomfortable, that's okay. That is okay. You do it afraid. You do it afraid. You're setting the stage for a healthy relationship. It is completely natural for you to feel uncomfortable if you're not used to having these conversations. So you take a few deep breaths. You give yourself permission to do it afraid, and you have these conversations. I absolutely encourage everyone, when you start dating, to, if you're thinking about being intimate with someone, not just penetration, but just intimate in general, to have these conversations. And if you're nervous about it or ashamed, it's okay. Give yourself permission to feel the feeling, identify the feeling, and allow it to pass. And it passes when you do it in spite of it.
Mhm.
Yes, keep doing that, ma'am. Yes, that's awesome. I'm very proud of you for doing that.
I will say I applaud her for that. That is not an easy conversation to have, especially with someone you don't really even know at that point. You're only getting to know, but you are protecting yourself as well as protecting somebody else and having great intentions behind it. The question is, though, what if then, say, said person gets their STD test back and they have been tested positive for something? Is that going to deter her? Are there going to be further conversations? Is there going to be a conversation, well, did you know that you can get help for this? Or Are you going to then say, listen, we need to have protected sex all the time? What is the conversation going to be like if it is positive? Because that is a very shameful realization for maybe that person or for you. And how are you going to proceed with the next step? Clearly, you are going to protect yourself. You're going to protect that person. But communication is key. And I think every question that she's asked has been very reasonable answers that we all already know. But it's reassuring everybody that this is what needs to happen in a good relationship. Communication, talking with your partner about what you like, what you don't like, where your boundaries are, where your boundaries aren't, and what's going to happen if, say, later on down the road, your sex drives are not the same. Is that something you guys can work together to make better? Or is it going to be a problem? I think these are all wonderful questions. I think, though, a lot of them are, like I said, just very easy to answer kind of a question. I am glad that she's going over this, and I hope that she's learning something from this as well.
Can you talk about the differences between emotional attraction, physical attraction, and sexual attraction?
So so physical attraction is, pretty cut and dry. You are physically attracted to someone's presence. You're physically attracted to how they present, right? Emotional attraction, you're attracted to how they make you feel. You're attracted to the conversation, the communication. You're just attracted to the feelings of it. Sexual attraction is it's very similar to physical attraction. However, you may very well, your vagina gets wet. You have a sexual response when you engage with this person. Physical and sexual definitely can oftentimes do cross over. They can all, of course, overlap, but those are the differences.
Can we get addicted to the excitement of sex and mistake it for true intimacy?
So that goes back to your relationship with sex as a person. If you're getting addicted to it, so again, we're talking about out of control sexual behavior. Can you be addicted? Not according to what we call the DSM. There is no sex addiction, but can you engage in out of control sexual behavior? Absolutely. And can you mistake that for true intimacy? Absolutely. But again, it goes back to, what is your relationship like with yourself? How healthy is that? What kind of well-rounded person are you to be able to have not barriers, but protective factors to prevent those things from happening?
So pretty much what the therapist is saying is it all depends on her relationship with herself, her relationship with knowing her own body, her relationship with sex, all of that. These are all factors. This is why she does not understand that she is still held accountable for the things that she did. She chose to have sex with Tom Sandoval. She chose to keep the relationship going, knowing there were red flags, that she didn't feel comfortable, that they didn't have proper communication, that he was saying one thing but doing another. It goes back to her. And I'm glad that the therapist is pointing this out, though I don't think she realizes truly it's about herself.
Going back to our orgasm conversation, and I know that this is like a typical thing because probably women don't experience orgasms as often as men do, but why do we as women feel compelled to fake orgasms when it's just like not happening for us? Are we faking it for the sake of our partner's feelings? What is that?
There's a number of reasons. And so first, ladies, let's not do that anymore. But as women, we have been programmed to prioritize the pleasure of others. And so that includes expressing that you've had an orgasm to your partner when maybe you really haven't, because again, you're prioritizing their pleasure. It's the expectation. Because oftentimes your partner will ask, well, did you have orgasm? Did you have orgasm? Did you have orgasm? Because a lot of sex is performance oriented instead of pleasure focused. There's a difference. You're focusing on only having the orgasm, and that's the goal. That's what you're seeking. And so as women, again, because we've been programmed to prioritize pleasure of others, I think a lot of times we want to be We want to highlight their pleasure. We want to feel that expectation. And that is the priority and not so much as our pleasure. So we should not be faking sex. And also, when you don't have the language, and then there's some shame and fear to say, no, I didn't have an orgasm, or, this doesn't make me feel good. Do this. You don't have the language. And so oftentimes too, it's about conflict avoidance, right? I'm going to go ahead and say I did it because I don't want to deal with the possible backlash. I don't want to deal with your attitude, or I don't want to deal with the awkwardness of that conversation. So women will oftentimes say, well, yeah, I did, but they didn't.
I hate to say it, but I know where this comes from as well. She's already said and admitted that she was not having orgasms when she was with James. Whether this is true or not, I cannot tell you. I'm not in her body to know. But this is what she has stated to people. I mean, she pretty much said it even in this episode that she wasn't experiencing it until she got with her new partner, new relationship, which was Sandoval. So let her know to stop faking them. Us women, we know better. And if you don't, she gives wonderful advice, and it should be pleasure over actually the satisfaction of others. Making sure you and your partner are both enjoying the sex and both are getting pleased from each other, because that's what counts the most.
Where does the attraction to people we know are bad for us come from?
Okay, so that it can be a number of things. That could be a trauma bonding situation. So for all intents and purposes, trauma bonding happens when we're children, and it occurs in a person. It happens when three things are true. A child experiences love, rejection, and neglect of some form. And so oftentimes we learn that love is difficult growing up, right? And if you've learned that in some form of fashion, then when someone comes with red flag after red flag after red flag, you don't necessarily notice it. It's not, you don't see the red flag because it feels familiar, right? And so when we're in unhealthy relationships, oftentimes we're not seeing those red flags because, again, they feel familiar. And so you have that honeymoon phase when your partner treats you like a queen, right? But oftentimes, the majority of the relationship, they treat you like, you know what, right? But we are always holding on to that false sense of hope that it was once good, it can be that again. When there really, oftentimes, there's no evidence that that is going to happen. So when we are in that unhealthy relationship and we know, maybe you're hearing from others that this is not a good relationship for you, and maybe it goes back to that trauma bonding situation where I'm always holding on to, well, it can be that good. And it's the negative thoughts and dialogue that we have with ourselves that keeps us there.
It's very interesting because she has had trauma as a child. Whether she's aware of it or not, we do know that she's adopted by her mother's sister, her biological mother's sister, which her aunt and uncle, mom and dad, gave her a wonderful life. They gave her love. They gave her everything that she needed and more. And she was raised with a lot of class and respect. But that trauma that she might not realize she has might come from that lack of a relationship with her biological parents. I'm no therapist, like I always say. I know she's never spoken on her dad. A father figure in a girl's life is a huge part in who they are attracted to and what they look for in men. I mean, she had a great example of a father figure in her life, but that trauma could still be there, not having that relationship with her biological father. And maybe that's where some of this trauma comes from, that she's not realizing was brought into relationships. And she was looking for all the wrong people from only what she knew. And now that she's gotten some therapy and has better understood herself and what she's been through and what she's going through, she can now see more clearly what was happening in the past. And that's why she's very vocal about it, not realizing that a lot of it too has what to do what she did. She likes to blame the guys, but a lot of it has to do with her. And I've been through my own trauma to understand this. And though I was manipulated, I was with a narcissist, I was with a guy that beat the shit out of me, it doesn't mean that I didn't put myself in those situations. I learned from my mistakes. I learned what was best for me. I learned not to put myself into situations like that again and to find people that were nothing like my exes, because that was bad news. She's just learning this now. I think, and I said this previously, that there is a lot of trauma there that we are very unaware of from when she was a kid. And I think it would be more interesting to hear about it, though I get it's very personal to her and maybe she doesn't want to open up about it, but I think it could really help her better understand where she came from and why she chose the things she chose.
Okay, so wrong person, great sex. How do you move on from them?
It's not easy, but it's possible. It is absolutely possible. So, wrong person, great sex. I would absolutely start with that individual love, because it's hard to prioritize something where there's harm involved. Yes, the sex is great, but if there's harm involved in a relationship, or just that you and that person are not in alignment, when you are walking in your values, principles, and morals, it's challenging to stay in that unhealthy, relationship. And so also prioritizing your pleasure. If you are prioritizing your pleasure, yes, you're having great sex over here, but if you also know what your body craves and you can give that to yourself, and you're loving yourself intentionally, values, principles, and morals, it's easier to walk away. It's when we need that external validation, and that's all we're giving, because we're not pouring into ourselves, that I'm attached to this because this person is meeting, some part of my needs, and I'm not necessarily meeting my own.
Such a good answer. Yes. I think that's like one of the biggest lessons that we have to learn, maybe, or maybe just speaking from my experience through trial and error, just like really prioritizing your morals and your values and being principled enough to fill your own cup and know that if this person isn't in alignment with you, there's no way it's going to work out. It's not a healthy relationship, and you're just going to have to like cut off ties and start filling your own cup and validating yourself from within, and using tools like toys to pleasure yourself and make sure that you can take care of yourself, and this person who you're choosing to add into your life should be just like the icing on the cake of it all.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And it's when we don't have that we're not rooted and grounded in ourselves, we are absolutely at risk for doing things out of desperation. And that's what that is. And so it's dangerous, honestly. But again, a lot of us have experienced it.
Which, this is where I can see Rachel's growth, that she's learned from her mistakes, that she realizes where she messed up, what she was doing wrong, what she was looking for, and how it affected her. My thing is, maybe it's just me, but I still don't feel like she fully understands the impact of those choices and how it affected other people. And though she has a better understanding of what she was feeling and why she did what she did, she's still not taking that ownership and being like, I know that I was in a vulnerable state. I wasn't in my I was in my own head. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't remembering the morals that I had set out for myself, and I lowered my standards to take on what I thought at the time was what I considered love, but then learned it was lust. And I realize now, by the actions that I did, that I hurt other people, that I affected other people's lives, that other people are still grieving through a process that were choices that I made. And I also feel like she is not taking ownership, because she knows that if she takes ownership, it's not going to look good for the lawsuit, number one. And two, the whole lawsuit in general proves to me and so many other people that she's not over this situation and that she wants to, in the long run, look like the victim, because she was made to look like the bad guy because she was. What she did were bad choices, bad actions. Two people both need to be held accountable for what they did. And those same two people need to take accountability for what they did to others. And that is the problem I have with Sandoval and I have with her. They just don't get the gravity of what happened to others because of their choices. I understand the gravity of what happened to her, and I'm happy that she can better understand her situation and understand what she did wrong and what went wrong. But she's still not taking that acceptance of, I had a part to play in this too. I allowed it to go on. I allowed it to keep happening. I didn't stop it. And I hurt people in a way that I can never say sorry enough.
Is it important for people to try multiple partners to know the difference between good and bad sex?
Nope, it's not. You can explore as much as you want to with one partner. You have the right, of course, being, being mindful of sexual health and having safer sex. You have the right to, engage how you please, but it is not required that you have multiple partners to explore sexually. That's absolutely a myth. Because you have a lot of people that have absolutely had tons of partners and their sex is trash because they're doing the same things over and over, right? That just because you have more partners does not mean that you are more experienced.
I hate to say it, but we all were wondering kind of what direction Rachel would kind of take her podcast in after VPR ended their season and what she would kind of do. I think this is a good taste of what her podcast is going to be once VPR's reunion specials are all done and their season has ended. And personally, this isn't something that necessarily I needed to hear, kind of a thing. Do I enjoy listening to her podcast? I do. Does it really determine on the subject matter if I enjoy it or not? It does. And personally, if I wasn't doing this recap for you guys, I probably would have skipped through a lot of it because it's stuff that, as a 36-year-old adult, I am very aware of. I've talked with a therapist about this. I've learned from my past mistakes, all of that. So it's good for, I believe, the younger generation that might not understand their bodies and sex like someone that's 36 that's experienced life and has been through ups and downs and has talked with a therapist, things like that. I think it is important for our younger generation. I think she did offer a lot of great tips and advice. And we do have like 4 more minutes left to go. But I just feel like this is kind of the direction her podcast is kind of going in. And personally, there are much better podcasts out there to listen to. I think really what we're all here for is her spilling the tea. What she has to say regarding everything. If she's going to, take accountability for what she's done, what she has to say about the lawsuit, what she has to say about what they're saying on VPR, that's what we're all here for. This really isn't it. And I really think she needs to find her own niche and what she wants to do. But if this is how it's going to go, I'll tell you this, we are covering much more interesting podcasts that we can all have a good time and laugh about.
I was attracted to this other person who was on the same reality TV show that I was on. Was I more attracted to him because I perceived him to have like more power or to have more influence, or or put him on a pedestal in some sort of way?
That absolutely could have been a part of it. And then again, it goes back to the forms of attraction you mentioned: sexual, emotional, physical. What was your why? Have you been able to, really identify that for yourself?
The why in the physical attraction?
The why in all of the attraction. Like, what was your motivation? What connected you? What attracted you to this person? Because it could have been the power, the image. It could have been all those things. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
It was okay, so it was emotional attraction because I enjoyed the feeling that I got being around him because I felt valued and adored and, like, really appreciated just, like, being present in the same room as him. And then also just a contrast between my last relationship that was very volatile and unhealthy, and I was going through some sort of heartbreak with that and just feeling, like, heartbroken basically, and just the environment that I was in, I was kinda torturing myself in a way. When I was around him, I felt this sense of relief and this sense of security and safety and acceptance. And I think both of those things, plus, like, I like the way he looked and I like the way he dressed and the way that he spoke, and he was very charismatic. And so I think all of those factors played into that chemistry.
Absolutely. So it also sounds like, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear also is that you were grieving the past relationship and there was a lot of heartbreak and things. So somebody coming along and speaking to those hurt parts of you, it's easier to attach. And so we're talking about like attachment theory, and you were, in this hurt place, this wounded somewhat place, and then here comes this person almost helping you to heal, because as human beings we thrive in community. So although it was an unhealthy relationship, you were getting something out of it, and you weren't there were things that were not resolved for you. And so if there were open wounds and here's this person, you're feeling hurt and seeing things like that, I can absolutely see how an unhealthy connection then forms, because he's pouring into your cup and it sounds like your cup may have been a little empty.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know about you guys, but to me, that seemed like she was still very unsure about the reasons why she was attracted and fell for Sandoval. I do believe the therapist pinpointed some great points. She was grieving. He filled that void that she was looking for and filled her cup up because it was empty. And it also created an unhealthy dynamic because of the situation. She felt the community and the love and the acceptance from him, but you can't tell me that she did not feel that from Ariana or even Sheena. Maybe not romantically, but she had people rallying behind her. She had people there to support her. She had people there that did anything and everything to help her get back on her feet when she was at her lowest. And I feel like that power, that idolization that she had for Sandoval was what really sucked her in. She saw that he had power. He talked to her about, he talked about what they would be like as a couple and what they could do and how they could do this and they could do that. He made plans and she felt so accepted by him that she was blinded by all those red flags that were popping up. Yet she wasn't herself either. She was lying to people. She was being very manipulative. She was doing things she morally would never have done before. And she let herself go because she was so wrapped up into how he made her feel that that's all that mattered at that time. She was using that part of that grief that she was going through to fulfill her needs with Sandoval because he was giving her what she thought she needed at the time.
I was in a 5-year relationship and I broke off this engagement, and my ex found a new partner, in a short amount of time, maybe like 2 months, if that, after. I gave him back the ring. And so I just felt like I was replaced. And I felt like our connection wasn't really like what I thought it was, even though I was the one that broke up with him. I still felt like I loved him and I saw a future with him. And it was a hard decision to make because I knew that he wasn't healthy for me, but I still loved him. And I just couldn't comprehend how he could fall in love with somebody else so quickly. And so it just made me feel like that whole relationship was a farce. I was in an environment where I was working, filming with my ex and his new girlfriend, and he was telling me that she's the love of his life and, all of these things that he used to tell me. And it just made me spiral into a dark place. And I was drinking a lot of alcohol to cope with that pain and just not in a good, stable place, trying to get back into the dating scene, but like feeling lost in my identity was shattered for multiple reasons, and then here comes along this other person that really made me feel seen and like valued and loved and cared for and accepted and wanted to hear my story and showed me this like undivided interest. Yeah, I think I was grieving.
Yeah. And being in that dark place can and it's not about a rationale. It's not about making it right or wrong. It is the reality that when you are in a dark place and you are getting into another relationship or situation, you are at a higher risk of making irrational decisions on ones that may not be the best, but again, they're serving a purpose. And so a lot of us have done that. This is not about right, wrong, or indifferent. This is just what it is. When you are in a place of desperation and hurt, you make decisions from that place. And so I can understand that.
I'm in a much better place now.
Is it just me, or do I feel like she doesn't even want to mention that this guy that she, fell into this new relationship with was still in a relationship with his girlfriend at the time, and it turned into a 7-month affair? I feel like she's leaving that out, whether it's that she feels like the therapist is going to judge her or not. I just feel like she's not saying it for a reason. Because if you think about it, the way she's even just describing how he made her feel are not necessarily bad feelings that someone should have in a relationship. They want to find someone that's going to be there, that they're going to feel secure, that they feel like someone's actually listening to them and wanting to hear what they have to say and accepting them and helping them feel better about themselves. She's leaving out the main detail, which is that he was in another relationship. She knew that, and she still chose to pursue those feelings that she was having for him and he was having for her. And it led into 7 months of just lying, manipulating, playing this whole game with people. It's gross. And listen, I do believe she's done a lot of reflecting, a lot of work. I know she can see kind of where it went wrong. Like, I know she can see that she was compensating her emotions with the alcohol. She was in a vulnerable state. She, maybe wasn't in the best thought process at that point. So when someone was giving her the things that she was looking for, she took it. But there were other factors to why this was an unhealthy relationship, even to begin with.
I feel like sometimes we look at celebrities like they're on a different level, and maybe there's more of a emotional connection to celebrity because it's how they make you feel about yourself. And then
Mhm.
probably this fantasy piece where you believe that you know this person, even though what you see isn't in totality who they are. Like you're not actually getting to know them on a personal level.
So when someone has celebrity and it's like, well, they're picking me, it's a confidence boost. It's also stroking your ego. And ego, when you're making decisions from that place, you can kind of get yourself into trouble, right? So of course, if this person is a celebrity and they want to engage with you and spend time with you, that also is like a dopamine rush. And so now I'm making more decisions from an emotional place and not necessarily the logical place of my brain. And so we end up, focusing on the potential of what we experience, what we believe versus what we experience. Does that make sense? So when we date potential, it's the narratives that we're focusing on. It's the dopamine rush. It's the possibility of being with somebody who we see on a different caliber. And it puts us in a position to also actually be hurt because again, potential versus reality.
This sounds really weird, but I'm more asking on a personal level because this is a apparently I'm a notable person and,
You
I'm a little
are.
bit infamous for the situation and now that I'm dating again, it's like, okay, now I have to be aware that other people may, this concept of me giving them attention may feed into their own ego. It's realizing now that, there's this extra factor that I need to take into consideration when dating and to be aware of that. And so, how can you discern whether or not you're feeding somebody's ego or if it's like a true connection? Is there a way to determine that?
Well, it doesn't have to be either or, right? Because you can absolutely, celebrity or not, feed someone's ego and still determine that, okay, I'm leading with my standards of relationship. I'm being transparent about, where I am, what you may encounter, by being with me and wanting to know your standards of relationship. What is your why? What are your values, principles, and morals? I'll always go back to that. Those should be our guiding principles. And so, with that combined with the transparent communication, that's kind of how you discern about the alignment piece. It doesn't have to be, either or. That's more black and white thinking that we kind of engage in. But, both things can be true because you are a notable person and you're a beautiful person. So just you being, beautiful outside of the celebrity can feed someone's ego. And so it doesn't have to mean a necessarily bad thing. Now, if it's all about that, and not, I'm wanting to connect with you on a genuine level, I'm wanting to get to know you, then, red flag.
Right.
Absolutely. But one doesn't have to, the ego only doesn't have to negate that I'm coming to you as a genuine person wanting to get to know you.
Good advice and a good perspective to look at the dating situation.
Mhm.
Um, okay, well, thank you so much, Nikquan. I really enjoyed this conversation with you, and I am still processing through my own shame that I feel with sexuality and just like talking about it in an open forum. So I thank you for holding space for me to like go through my emotions and get my words out and have this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I commend you because we cannot hear what we will not speak. So just by you speaking this shame is helping you to release it, and also helping a lot of others because it's something that a lot of us hold. And again, you're not alone. So thank you for being a partner in this journey to sexual wellness.
Okay. Now, it's been said that she knew who James Kennedy was, that she went and she sought him out and made sure to go to these shows that he was DJing at to get his attention. So, in a way, is she projecting, saying like this is kind of what she did? And now she's having similar issues because the magnitude of how big this affair did get. She is considered a celebrity in the eyes of some people, and there are going to be people now that are going to use her for her status, whether it's in a relationship or a friendship. Hate to say it, even as a small YouTuber myself, I've dealt with similar situations, but nothing on the magnitude of this girl's scales. But for me, it just felt weird, her projecting, thinking that I don't know, that she's some huge celebrity because of this. And I don't know, I feel like she was feeding her own ego there real quick. But I also feel like Tom was like kind of not a step up from DJ Kennedy, but in the sense that he was on the show longer, he was well known bigger than James because of the show, and maybe she saw it as a step up. She was going from, DJ James Kennedy to Tom Sandoval and the most extras, this guy that plays all these amazing cover fucking songs. And thinks he's this hot rock star. I feel like, I don't even know why I should be laughing about it, but I feel like that was her step up. And maybe she did see it that way. It is a very big possibility. And maybe that's, I don't know. I feel like this girl was trying to make a name for herself from day one. I've always felt that way about Rachel. She came in the pageant circuit wanting her name to get out there, so she was recognized, because if you're recognized, especially in the pageant circuit, and your name's out there, they're more likely to remember you, know who you are when you're walking that stage, and get titles. Let's be real. And even though she says, she doesn't care about this celebrity status, clearly there's something about her that enjoys it. And she was longing for it. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. I'm very interested to know what you all think about all of this. It was definitely a different kind of podcast. Like I said before, if this is kind of the direction she's taking it in, we might have better things to be doing with our time. Like I said, I know I'm here for a couple things. I do enjoy her podcast for the most part. I like when she covers more of what she's feeling and what she went through, and when she opens up about the affair, because there's so many unanswered questions that I think we're all looking for, that we seek it when she does these podcasts in hopes that she will spill the beans a little bit. But I had fun with you all. This is why I'm here. This is why I do what I do. I love getting to talk with you all. I love getting to discuss Vanderpump Rules. I love getting to just react and commentate and all of that great stuff. So I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Make sure to like this video. If you're not yet subscribed, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I'm telling you, you're missing out if you haven't done that already. And make sure your notifications are set to all so you can get notified every time I post a video or go live. You don't want to miss out on those. And I am going to be starting member-only lives where we discuss the reunion and much more. We have a lot more Bravo stuff that we need to talk about, and I kind of want to start doing lives again, but I want to start doing them members only for my members, and I want you guys to have fun, be able to know that it's a safe space, and we can all chit-chat about anything we want, even the Valley. Even Below Deck Med, that's coming out with a new season. Oh, I can't wait. There's just so many good series coming. Dubai's coming back. I can't wait for Real Housewives of Dubai. They always got the tea, girl. They always got the drama. It is high class tea and drama. I love it. Let me know down below, what is the one thing you are looking forward to coming up with these new Bravo series. Also, I want to talk about Vanderpump Villa. So if you have not yet become a member, I would consider becoming a member, because I will be starting those next week. So, again, I hope you all have a lovely weekend. I will be back here again very soon. Bye, everyone.
Wanna burn all the bridges between us.